I'm great. How about you, Tabs? You great?
Good, as always.
Yeah, exactly. So for those that don't know who you are, when you meet someone out and about, like you mentioned the nightclub incident the other day.
How would I introduce myself?
How would you introduce yourself? Yeah.
Oh, I'd be like, my name's Tabby.
Yeah.
If they don't know who I am.
And don't you know who I am? No. And what would you say that you do? Because like I kind of look at what you do and say it's kind of, you know, you're an entrepreneur, you're an online coach, you're impacting, you know, women, the community. Like, would that be a fair kind of summary?
Definitely. You know what's funny? Like, if you had have asked me a year ago, my answer straight away would have been, oh, I'm a bodybuilder. Like, I never would have brought up like what I did for work. Now the first thing is, I always say like I'm an online coach, I work in the online space. And then if they say like, oh, do you do anything else? Yeah, then I'll bring up I'm an entrepreneur, but it depends on what the level of the conversation is. But 100% I used to just be like, yep, I'm a bodybuilder, and I would be so impressed by that. Now I'm like, they don't give a shit.
So what's shifted though, like over the last 12 months, even for you? Like what shifted from kind of identifying as a bodybuilder to now being an online coach entrepreneur?
It's probably because I did only identify myself as a bodybuilder at that point in time, even though, I mean, yes, my online space has grown so much from that. And that's kind of like what got my online space to where it is. I only saw myself in this little bubble.
You were a bit robotic back then.
I was such a robot.
Yeah.
Thanks,
yeah. I'll confirm that a year ago Tabby was a robot. But I think like for that craft of bodybuilding and to be successful at it, you kind of have to.
You have to be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to make sacrifices. Everything's going to give and take. But even now that I've seen my business level up. Well, I've seen it level up, but I have actually taken a bit of a step back from the bodybuilding to be able to do that. I haven't been able to do it both at once. So
we'll come to that. I want to talk about business, but like, so you recently turned 22.
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
And you started in fitness, I think about 18, right?
Yes.
So during COVID. So how would you kind of describe the last 4 years for you? Because it seems like it's been a bit of a whirlwind.
If anyone met me 4 years ago, I'm not the same person. And sometimes I'm like, I feel like I would literally have to reintroduce myself to someone because I look at myself when I was 18 and I'm like, I did not know what I was expecting. It definitely wasn't this, but also the way of the world was not the same 4 years ago. Like the only reason I even got into the online space was because of COVID.
Yeah.
Originally, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a personal trainer on the
Did you
gym
ever
floor.
work out of a gym?
For 2 weeks.
Oh, there you go. But you know what? Like it's you hear that people kind of like, oh, I want to make the transition online. I think Jackson is someone that we both know. He just went straight online.
Yes.
So I didn't even realize that you did 2 weeks in the gym.
Yeah, I did do 2 weeks on the gym floor, like probably for 4 clients.
Yep.
And I had no choice but to go to online. And at the time I was like, this is so shit. Like, what am I going to do? But I ended up loving it. And when people come to me now for advice, like if they should do both, I'm like, you know what? I think being on the gym floor is great for like networking. I mean, it's great for just like overall training, knowledge and execution and discussing and making connections and communicating. But if it's what you want to do, if you value like time freedom, environment freedom, things like that, well, then you're obviously going to want to dive into the online space. But it's like, do you have the capacity to be able to do that too? You got to be realistic.
So obviously when you kind of started on the floor for 2 weeks and then went online probably because of lockdowns and stuff like that, like how did it kind of go, obviously today, you're doing $50,000 months and stuff like that. Like how did it go from starting 4 years ago to where you're at now?
Well, the biggest shift would have been like my social media presence, definitely.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't start, like I wasn't someone who started out and just had all the clients come to me straight away. It's one of those things where it's consistency. Consistency is what's going to get you
Did
there.
you have a social profile 4 years ago?
No. Not to the extent that I do now. It was more so I would just post on social media because it was like fun. And I guess some people liked to see what I was doing back then, but I had no kind of niche. I wasn't posting content for engagement reasons, or I had no kind of idea on algorithms. Like I didn't understand any of that. So it was pure, and it is still now, it was all just authentic. But again, that's probably what's created that engagement now too.
So like before and after, I think now, like how many do you have on TikTok?
TikTok, I have 250,000.
And then on Instagram?
32K.
It's about 280, multi-platform.
Yeah.
back then, what was it? 5,000, 10,000?
Oh, Instagram, nothing.
Yeah.
Would have been under 10,000. And same with TikTok. I mean, that did take off once I was more consistent. But at the start, just like anyone, I had to, before a video, because it's obviously a lot easier to go viral on TikTok, but before a video went viral, I was posting probably like 2-3 times a day for 1 to 2 years.
Yeah. And so, because I've spoken to a lot of people kind of under 25 that have built their brand initially, through TikTok, and they've kind of described it as almost like eyeballs that help grow Instagram, but Instagram's really where you kind of monetize things.
Oh, yeah.
Has that kind of been the same experience for you?
Yes, I don't really monetize my coaching on TikTok. It's exactly like you said.
Yeah.
Because if I'm posting like myself and my body, for example, on TikTok, people would be like, oh, she looks good. I like what she does. But they're not going to then...
So it's like window shopping.
It is literally window shopping. Yeah. And then they will obviously go on my TikTok and be like, yeah, she does look good. And then they'll see that I've got a link on Instagram, and then my Instagram is, that's all just literally my marketing platform.
Yeah. And more like the coaching, more professional. This is the service that I provide.
Yeah. Because like on my TikTok, I have it there that I'm a coach, but you wouldn't look at my TikTok for coaching advice. Whereas you can, because like one of my goals is that even if you're not a client of mine, you can look at my Instagram and achieve results just based off my content.
Yeah.
My TikTok, no way.
Yeah.
But again, that's the whole like window shopping kind of idea.
Yeah. And like talking about your clients and obviously, the community that you're working with, like what would you say for you? Like who are you serving? I always ask, entrepreneurs, like who are you serving? What's the impact? Like if I was looking through a glass window at your shop and your services, what type of people are you selling to?
Obviously a female audience, but the female in particular that I do actually like to work with is actually just like the vulnerable female. And I think it's an okay thing to say like you're a vulnerable person. I don't think there's anything wrong with...
What do you define as that? Because to different people, vulnerability can mean different things.
Yeah, I would say someone lacking self-confidence, someone who is easily influenced by other people, and just a younger teenager that's like trying to find their way, because that's fucking hard. Like now, like I feel like every female is supposed to be in the online field. Every female is supposed to be doing this, supposed to be doing that, but you don't have to be doing any of that if you don't want to. No. But it's like trying to find who you really are, and that is it's being vulnerable.
Is that something that I guess old you can identify with?
100. It was 6 months ago. Like I was a closed book, and it's funny that I'm like trying to help people with that. And I was helping people with that when I wasn't even that myself at the time. And it's like, well, how the fuck can you help people if you're not even like, not that I wasn't practicing what I preached, but I felt like I wasn't even necessarily comfortable with who I was. But you do have to go through that to be able to give proper like tips and tricks to other people and help them.
What kind of, again, using the example of you, like, and we've joked about it, like, when we did that podcast at my place, when was that? It would have been about, probably about 10 months ago.
Yeah.
I remember you leaving, and my wife and I was like, fuck, Tabby's great, but fuck, she's closed off.
Oh.
She's so closed off. And Lauren obviously having, been a bit older, having gone through the journey, she's like, I want to, try and help her kind of get more in touch with where she's at. Like what kind of, because I've definitely seen the shift from afar the last kind of 6 months in particular, what kind of shifted that for you to be able to, I guess, look into that vulnerability or, inside and kind of come out with it?
I don't know if this is like where you were thinking where I'd go with it, but I was doing a competition prep at the time, and I've done a few preps before. I had done like 3 preps before this. I know what a prep was that felt right. The whole entire prep didn't feel right to me. And for the past 4 years of my life, like I was saying before, I've identified myself as a bodybuilder, as a bikini athlete.
I love that fucking word, identify. It's just identify. Could go so many ways with that today, but anyway, keep going.
but I did. Like I only identified myself as a bikini athlete, and I'm getting in this prep and I'm thinking, the last time I prepped, I'm so close to a pro card, I got to get it now. But I knew in my head I wasn't getting it. I knew that. The whole prep I was like, I'm nowhere near ready for a pro card, but I had this ego about me that couldn't pull out. And then I'm also having all these like health issues that are coming up in my prep. I'm in hospital, I'm in and out of hospital, but then I'm like, why am I not pulling out of a prep? And then in the back of my mind, it's but I'm a bikini athlete. This is what I have to do.
Yeah.
And I think it was coming to that realization that this is not my life forever, and it's not going to be.
Didn't feel congruent with yourself.
It didn't feel right. And that's why I ended up getting on stage and I looked mediocre, and I look at that now and I'm like, I'm glad I went through that, because I think if I hadn't have done that prep, well, then I still would have been working. I still would have been in a building phase. I still would have had that goal of, the next time I'm on stage is the pro card time. Whereas now I'm like, okay, that's something I want 100% down the track. I'm not giving up on that goal at all, but that's not going to get me far long term, is it? Like having that.
Well, let's actually talk about competing, because I think competing is almost like the maximal reflection of like a lot of stuff that women go through on a day-to-day, like with eating, kind of food choices, eating disorders, with kind of, how they look, how they feel. Like, again, 12 months ago, you wouldn't have gone out for a meal, you wouldn't have, I guess, lived. Like, what would your advice be to, women watching right now, or even, blokes that, they're seeing this with their partner or their wife or something like that, to those women to kind of go from where you were, where you were so rigid, to now it's like you can actually be flexible with it, but still look amazing, still feel amazing, and actually be healthier internally, not just externally.
Like it's so hard, and whether it's good advice or not good advice, I think you actually almost need to go through it.
Yeah, okay.
Because for 3 years, 4 years, definitely I had disordered eating tendencies, and I ate out of a meal prep container for 3 years. Like I would go to a restaurant and I would act like it was fine for me. I'm just not hungry. I don't want something, or I've got a prep coming up, but I was also comfortably prepping because that was comfortable for me. It made it socially acceptable not to eat. But I look back on all those moments and I'm like, it's not that the food that I care about, it's the experience and the memories, because even if I was going out for dinner with someone, I wasn't even aware of the conversation that was being had.
Yeah, because your tummy was probably cramping.
100%. And I was thinking about my meal that I was having at home, and then I would go home and be like, what the fuck were we even talking about at dinner? And like, that's just, it's so sad. But I do think you actually have to go through it and experience those emotions to know that you don't want to be like that. And one thing that helped me, which I wasn't even open about it 10 months ago, is if I had have had a slip up on my diet, or I probably would never have even slipped up, because that wouldn't have crossed my mind to be able to do. But I wasn't comfortable even telling my coach, like, hey, I'm having these feelings. Your coach doesn't want you to be a robot. Like your coach knows you're a human being. And it was about being vulnerable and honest with my coach about my feelings, and actually just saying, hey, this is how I fucking feel, and I don't know what to do about it. Like, why? There's so many things in life like we don't know, but you have to go to someone and reach out for questions. You have to ask advice for. I had to ask for advice on how do I get better at eating, literally, and living. And once you actually de-stress and you do allow yourself to have things, you actually end up looking better because your body's 100%. Not stressed.
Yep. Well, it's not holding on.
No.
It's not resisting. It knows that you're in that kind of anxious state.
Your cortisol's so high. When I was eating literally out of a meal prep container for 2-3 years, I looked worse than I do now. And now I eat out. Well, if I'm not in a dieting phase and I'm building or I'm maintaining, I eat out most days.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I look better for it.
What would you, and I know like, you obviously mentioned some of the health stuff that you went through. Like, what did you go through? I know we've spoken about it. But
yeah. When I was in my competition prep, I was experiencing, like, I was just going hypo a few nights, obviously from being on low carbs, and I don't know if I can, like, obviously taking substances as well.
No, we don't talk about it today.
Okay, yeah. And obviously taking PEDs. And I ended up being diagnosed with hypothyroidism while I was in my competition prep. And at the time I thought,
what does that mean for someone who doesn't know?
Yeah. So it's just when your metabolism, it honestly just can't slow down. Yeah. So at nights I would notice I was getting racing heart palpitations. I remember a few times I would actually check my Apple Watch. My heart rate would be 140 for like 2-3 minutes while I'm literally trying to sleep. And then I would obviously go into like that hypo state. But then what comes with that is anxiety, because you're like, what is happening to me? That I could, obviously had been medicated. I had gotten over it, gaining weight as well, helped after the competition itself. But then a few months later, I'm getting these heart palpitations again, but then I'm having blood tests that are saying, well, your thyroid's normal. And then I'm like, well, if my thyroid's normal, I've gained weight, what the fuck's wrong with me? Because I don't feel right. And a few times at night, I would go into that state where I was like, okay, I don't know, I'm not going hypo because I've eaten enough. I don't have hypothyroidism, but I'm getting a stabbing pain in my chest right now. I'm 21. Surely I'm not having a heart attack. But I live alone. What do I stay in my room and wait another hour and see what happens? Like, fuck no. So I've called the ambulance probably like 3 times over the last like 3 months, thinking I was having a heart attack, because it's not a nice feeling. And anyways, they have diagnosed me with having pericarditis, which is now under control, obviously being medicated, but it's just a very eye-opening thing to realize, like, health is wealth. Like, if you don't have your health, 100%. You have nothing.
But I think your story though, like, because I want to touch on PEDs, because it's obviously, even in the last few years, it's become so much more rampantly used, in particular with young women. Like, do you feel that, like, talk to me about, like, in the competition space and things like that, like, from your observation, like, what percentage these days of girls out there are kind of using this stuff?
A lot more than you think.
Yeah.
Most of your social media influencers that girls look up to, I don't want to sit here and say I can assure you they're taking something.
Of course, yeah. But
more than likely. It may not be anything drastic. I think that's why people just aren't educated around PEDs. You say to someone, yeah, I've taken performance enhancing drugs. To someone who doesn't go to the gym, they're like, what the fuck?
What does that mean?
Yeah, they don't know. They think to the greatest extent. It can be something very minor. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but yeah, a lot more than what people think would be utilizing something.
Why have you chosen? Because I think one of the things that I love about you is that, like, so many people in the industry, it's like they still try to keep it taboo. They don't want to talk about it. You just been like, oh, fuck yeah, I've used this and that. Like, why have you chosen just to be authentic?
That honestly, it's just who I am. Yeah. I am like, I can't lie about it. I can't. One, I wish I didn't start as young as I did. But the reason I had, and I think where it's, if someone was like choosing whether they should or they shouldn't, you do need to ask yourself some questions. I think you need to have a certain amount of training history.
What would, like, when did you first start? 19, 20?
I was 18.
18.
Yes. Okay. Which, looking back on, I was very young, and it's not something I would tell someone else to do. But again, if I hadn't have done that, and again, at the time it was only very minor, it wasn't something crazy, but if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be where I was and had these realizations. So I had already had training, like, I started training in the gym, like, properly. Like, my parents had competed, I had been around competitors. Okay. So it wasn't like I randomly got into the space at 18 and was like, yep, let me take drugs. Yeah. No, I had been around it. I had done building phases. I had the education, and my coach at the time felt like I was fine to take it too. So that's why, to me, it wasn't a big deal. But I remember when I started as well, I could not tell a female that I was doing this or in the space. The people who I'd ask about it was like my male friends that were competing. Like, it wasn't a female thing. But again, then because you're talking to males about it, you're getting male advice. You're not getting this female topic. So I guess why I'm so open about it is because I wish I had a female to talk to when I was 18 to tell me, hey, maybe wait a few years, or
100%. Because I think, like, you know, male and female biology is obviously slightly different, right? So I think, you know, a bloke coming in at it and maybe they've used some stuff themselves before, how their bodies reacted, they're maybe not looking at it through a women's lens.
Fuck no way. And they don't care either. Yeah. Like, males do not care. They have such a hard approach. It's like, these side effects are irreversible. So I'm very lucky nothing has ever happened to me. But what about the next female who's 18 and has no one to speak to and has been given wrong advice? Like, I am lucky that the people who I have around me are actually supportive, they care, and they're knowledgeable. But that's not the case for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I heard the other day that they're looking at doing a PED Olympics.
Oh, no.
So, you know, basically like a version of the Olympics, but just for people that are on PEDs. I think it's just the reality of where people are at in society. My advice to people is always like with that stuff, it's like get in a good solid amount of training like naturally.
But at the time too, and where I see a lot, like I have girls come to me asking for advice or asking if they should do this. And I know this might sound a little bit potentially rude, but I'm like, your bone structure is shit. Your genetics is shit. You're doing this because you want to compete, but I'm sorry, you're never going to be up there anyway. So is it worth putting your health at risk for a goal that is probably unrealistic? Like I know for me,
but that's part of also being a coach, by the way.
Yes, is
telling people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear.
Yeah, and I'll do that. Whereas a lot of coaches won't. If I have a client come to me and they want to compete in 6 months and they're not competitive or going to be competitive, I'll tell them to go somewhere else if that's their goal. Or I say, okay, stay with me. We can get this, but here's the trajectory of where I think we're going to.
It's a 12-month prep, not a 12-week one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stuff like that. Let's kind of shift gears. Obviously, you know, spoken about quite a few things like building your brand, right? So you mentioned that initially with, you know, TikTok and social, nothing went viral, then something went viral. You know, because I think a lot of people out there in the space, they have 10, 20, 30,000 followers, whatever it is, but they're not necessarily monetizing it. You know, I think that's a big thing. Like, how did you start to take your audience from, you know, making $5,000 a month to kind of where it's at now, where it's, you know, 10x that?
If we're talking from like a social media standpoint, it would be, and I know this is going to sound so lame, but like be fucking different. Like, why should someone actually come to you as opposed to the next person they're going to scroll down and see? Because everyone's out there posting content, but everyone's posting the same content. No one wants to see your 3 best exercises to grow your glutes. Like, why? Because it's been done. And everyone knows, everyone's doing this. So what are you doing that's actually different? So when a client like approaches my page, I want to almost give them like no choice but to want to work with me. Like they're going to sign up on my page and feel like they're missing out if they're not working with me. And so it's like, how can you create that with your audience? It's like a sense of almost urgency to sign up with you. Whether they can afford it at that time or not, they're going to want to be able to afford it if they see how good you are.
Do you feel, actually, we didn't touch on this, like your background in education, I think you'd done a background in sports science, was it? Or
no, just a Cert 3-4.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you've obviously done a lot of mentorships and things like that over the years. Do you feel like your background with all this education has helped you have the confidence to be able to articulate this stuff on your pages?
100%, yes. And even the stuff I do now, like I don't just go out there, work every day and like make content. I still to this day, I'm on YouTube, I'm watching videos, I'm doing other education, I do the clean health stuff. Like I look at that stuff to level up. So I think that's actually what a lot of people do neglect. They're sitting there like, okay, I need to make content. I need to do.
Especially the younger generation.
They are, yeah. And they're like, all right, I need to do a topic of something about like how to increase your protein intake. They don't actually fucking know. What do? They go on ChatGPT and they're like, write me a script on how to increase protein intake. So it's actually being knowledgeable. I know that if anyone comes to me with a question on nutrition, macros, calories, I don't need to look something up. Yeah,
because you put the work in.
I put the work in, yeah.
I think it's it's almost like edutainment these days.
Yeah.
If you look at like 5 years ago, it's like you made the point of like being different. 5 years ago, you could say, here are my top 3 things to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Today though, because it's been done to death, it's like, how are you stopping them from scrolling the feed to say, okay, this is, this Tabby, she's got something interesting here. How can I, lock into that?
But it comes down to, again, we're in that TikTok generation. I don't want to be watching a video for like more than 15 seconds if that thing hasn't caught me in the first 3. Like really. And that's why you can actually watch your view times. I think it's important to look at your analytics, look at the videos that do well. Like you need to hook me at the start. Like in that first 3 seconds, if you're not telling me what the rest of the video is about, see ya. Like I'm not there anymore. I'm out.
So do you have a process that you kind of like go to with videos? Like how you start, what you get into, length, or do you kind of just let it flow or?
No, it will depend. Always like starting a video with a hook, but usually like you don't just think of a hook and then you're like, yeah, I'm going to make a video on that. And the topic like will come to my mind. I'll like usually make the video and then I'll come up with an idea behind it. but it's also how you choose to communicate, how you're talking to the camera. A year ago, I couldn't talk to the camera properly. So I don't want people to like look at this and think, okay, but like I'm not very good behind camera. You're not going to be fucking good when you start. You're just not. Like do
it's
it.
A skill.
Yeah, I've been filming myself on camera for 4 or 5 years. Like that's the only reason now that I'm like
put the reps in.
Yeah, if someone like pulls out a camera now and they're like, "Oh, are you okay to speak?" I'm like, "Yeah, hit me."
Yeah,
I would never have done that before. I would have been like, "Okay, but what do I say?"
What advice do you give to other coaches that kind of still have a blockage around that point? You know, like that whole thing of like, oh, I'm not comfortable talking to camera and stuff like that. Like, what would be your advice?
Practice. I'm not saying you have to speak on camera and post it. Speak on camera, film it, edit it. I ask like friends if it like looks appealing. Ask your honest friends. Don't just ask someone who's going to be like, does this look good? I do that sometimes. Sometimes I'll send someone a video and be like, does this actually make sense? Or do you find this good? If they're like, nah, it's shit, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to post it. Getting advice from people, but you're going to have to eventually like, it's literally character building. I was bullied on social media. I had people tell me like, what the fuck am I doing? I was judged for posting gym content when I first started. Imagine I had stopped because of the 13-year-old troll on TikTok who told me I look
You wouldn't
shit.
be doing what you're doing now.
No. And seriously, I remember at one point I had to turn my comments off on TikTok for probably 6 months.
Oh shit, okay.
Because I was getting hundreds of messages a day telling me like, what, like literally it was
who
bullying.
are you to be posting this?
Yeah.
Yeah, far out. And that's I think another thing that stops a lot of people too from making that jump to take their business and brand online. I think, you know, we've spoken about at length, you know, the importance of brand. Like you spoke before actually about like looking at your analytics. Like what are some of the things that you'll look at kind of on a week-to-week basis to kind of just track how you're going, to give yourself ideas and inspiration?
I check watch time just to see like length of videos, what kind of length people do like. But again, that will also determine your hooks, your topics.
Are you finding there's an average watch time at the moment? Because like observation for me, it's like even the last 6 months, it seems like everything just seems to, at least on Instagram in particular, be going shorter and shorter.
The watch times are like, I couldn't sit here and be like, yeah, my average watch time is 20 hours because I like everything is literally going to depend. It'll depend on how long of the period it is against. But yeah, I'm not posting videos that are going for much longer than a minute.
Okay.
Because
I think about it, you know, a year ago, it's like, you know, 75, 90 seconds. It just seems to keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
But it's like what I said to you before, like I want to be able to educate when people do come to my page, but I do also need to sell a business. I need to make money at the end of the day. So yes, I want to be able to give them advice in that minute, but I'm not necessarily getting paid for that minute. So how do I generate that into a lead? Well, keep it short, keep it simple, but don't give them the whole holistic approach. Like that's when then I want them to look at that video and be like, okay, great advice. Nice. I'm going to try this. Actually, maybe I'll go to her for coaching so I can get a little bit more. So like if your video is going for like 2-3 minutes, well it's like an iMovie. You're actually trying to educate someone. Like you're not getting paid for that.
No.
So you're wasting your time.
Do you have a because I think one thing I've also noticed in the space is the coaches that actually ask for business, ask to receive money, are those that actually get it. A lot of coaches actually have blockages around when it comes to saying, hey, buy my shit.
Oh yeah.
Like, do you have a frequency between kind of when you're posting free, engaging, education, edutainment, and then when you're actually asking for someone to invest?
I think it's more of a step-by-step process. So it is like the education, then it comes down to like value. And then it's like, okay, well then, because I actually never post on my Instagram story, sign up here.
Okay.
Or sign up now. I don't do that. I like to place a sense of urgency. I wouldn't say it's like hidden, but it's that aspect of like, yes, I really want to work with you. I feel like she has limited capacity, so I'm going to get in.
Yeah, okay. So you're not necessarily like going, hey, buy my shit.
No.
You're kind of subliminally messaging it when you're doing your before and afters or talking about your information and stuff like that.
But I do that for a reason as well, because I think because I do have a lot of like consults coming through, I do have a big clientele. I don't need that urgency of, oh, okay, I need clients coming in. But if it's not a direct sign up here link, I also know that the lead I'm going to get will be a little bit warmer because they've gone through the effort to actually inquire or book in a consult, but also they will be more specific to my niche. If I have someone who's just clicked on my story and it's like sign up here, it could be absolutely anyone. Whereas if it's someone who values my content, they value my education, they want to learn more, well, they're going to be more attracted to want to work with me because they're liking what I'm already producing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you mentioned it last night, actually. A lot of coaches will do the, hey, DM me. They won't advertise their prices, etc. You're very open. You're like, here's the prices, yes or no. Why have you chosen that approach? Because it clearly works for you.
It does. And I think I encourage everyone to put their prices out there because you're promoting your value. And also your leads will be so much warmer if people already know your price. They're not going to do the consult. They're not going to waste your time and then get to the end of it and be like, what are your prices? Oh, I can't afford that. If they're aware of the price from the initial stages and then they're willing to go ahead with the consult, well, they're going to be a lot more inclined and you're going to transfer over a lot more leads.
Well, I think you said pretty much like your phone consult, you do 10 or 12 of them, whatever it is a week, to 95% conversion rate.
I almost know that if I've got someone on a phone, then that I'll convert them to a client. Yeah. I have that confidence within myself. If it's like, of course, there's obviously going to be those clients that don't. I have them. We all do. You're going to. Don't feel like disheartened if you do 5 consults in a row and none of them sign up. Like you've got to keep going, but also be self-aware. Like where are you maybe going wrong with these consults? Like if I have the confidence now that I know if I've got a client on a call, I can transfer that into a client. It's like, well, I wouldn't have been able to do that necessarily 2 years ago. I've had to build up those kind of like sales skills.
Do you find that there's a conversion time with clients that come into you, i.e., by the time they've put a lead in, have they been following you for a period of time when you get on the phone and you kind of connect with them or?
So often, yes.
Yeah.
I feel like I almost have like a cult following. For example, like if I post something once, no one cares. If I'm posting it and posting it and posting it, people are like, oh, this looks good. I think she likes this. Like I'm going to get onto that. So most clients that come to me, almost all of them in the consult say, I've been following you for a while. Yeah. I really like what you have and I've been thinking about it. And then they're like,
so your sales funnel, if you were to kind of give it a term, is pretty much like putting out high quality information that has a bit of a hook that catches people.
Yes.
Doing it consistently. Yeah. Being very transparent with your prices so that over time, these people that you've hooked them in, they've engaged with you, they've followed you, they've been involved in the journey. And then so by the time they come to book a call, like they're already ready to go.
Yeah. And that
it's
way.
not even really a sales process.
It's
like
not.
For you.
It's really not. And also they come to me thinking they know me. I'm on the phone and it's personal because they've seen my life, they've seen a story. And that's why if you post one video and it's great, like no one's going to give a shit because they're going to go on your Instagram and see nothing else that provides them value. You've got to keep them wanting there to stay. So if you have consistent stuff on you have consistent content on your Instagram page, people are going to want to know more about you. And then when they get on that call, well, yeah, it is more personal. It's more of a relationship and that's why they feel warmer to stay.
How much time per week do you think you spend on content creation and social?
It would depend. Now that I have someone else helping me with it, I will obviously once a month we we do content and I've got that posting out, but I post content every day. If it's it used to take me a lot longer than it does now. Like I could sit here and be like, yeah, I spend hours on it per week, but I don't actually necessarily spend 10 hours doing content every week. Sometimes I'll get up my phone, I'll record a video and post it. Sometimes that's the best type of stuff because it's authentic. But into regards to hours, I wouldn't know. Probably because it's so natural to me. It doesn't seem like a job or a it's a hobby. But
say 2 years ago, was there obviously a lot more probably time and work for you because you were a bit more rookie at it?
Oh yes, I would be like, okay, I'm going to schedule now to make this video and I'd write up a script.
Yeah. You don't do scripts anymore?
No. My whole notes app used to be topics and no, I don't do that now.
But question though, would you recommend it for people that have still got that limitation?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You have to let it out.
So find it help for you. Yeah, initially anyway.
Definitely. I think I never used to think, but I've got a very creative brain, but I never used to do that. I never used to think I did. I didn't think I did because I never used to put what was in my brain onto like pen and paper or onto my notes app. I never used to let it out.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to go through that. It's like what we've been talking about, like the whole journaling aspect too. Mm-hmm. So once I started diving more into depth with that, I was like, I've actually got a lot of stuff up there. Like I've got a lot to give people. But having that confidence and knowing that you've got that too, you have to figure that out somehow. So I definitely think like having topics, writing things down, see other reels. I used to save them, look at that for inspiration, and then put your own sort of twist on it. Write about topics that you like as well. Like don't talk about protein if you don't want to talk about protein. Yeah. Like put your own little twist on it. And that's every person that does well on social media, they're all different. So like, why are they doing well? Because they have a sense of difference. So like, don't copy what they're posting either, because it's not going to work for you.
Your content probably the last, few months has started to not pivot, but change, like you're getting a lot more trainers asking you for advice and things like that. Like, how have you found that kind of response from people in the industry that I guess are trying to duplicate your success?
Yeah, because it's interesting. Like, yes, in the last few months, my business in regards to like finances and stuff has changed a lot. Like I have been able to generate a lot higher income, but I was never posting about the increase until recently. So it was like I was doing this and I was seeing an increase and no one was asking me about it until I started posting, hey guys, like I can make this amount of figures per month as an online coach. And then people were more inclined to be like, how are you doing that? But unless I wasn't posting like my lifestyle, if I wasn't posting about my finances and my income, I wouldn't have got those questions.
What are some of the questions that you're getting?
People, every day I get questions of people asking me whether I'm doing like business mentoring. How have I scaled my business to the amount of figures it is? How do I generate leads? How am I so consistent with content? Do I come up with the ideas? Do I work with people? Or it's even just how do I systemize like my processes to make it easier to take on more clients?
We'll actually talk about that. We were speaking about it yesterday, like systemizing. Obviously, dealing with 100 clients on a high ticket offering compared to dealing with 20 clients is different kind of training systems, technology systems. Like, I guess, how have you built the back end of your business as your clients, client intake has increased?
Yeah.
What have you done there?
Well, I'm a Google Sheets like guru. I don't like the apps at all. I feel like with Google Sheets as well, it's more individualized.
So you're not using an app?
I don't use an app. No.
Yeah. And so when you say you don't like it, why? What's kind of stopped you from using a Trainerize or a?
Yeah, I actually just don't think there's the personal component to it. I really don't.
Okay.
If someone is signing up to an app and they're given a meal plan, yes, you can cater their meal plans, but you're still just like clicking, apple, oats. And then it can create things for the client, which I mean can be great for someone to follow if it's a Gen Pop, but I don't think that's a high ticket offering. And I know personally for myself, I'm like, what do I like? I like knowing that my coach has actually like thought about, written out, and has my plan on the Google Sheet as opposed to just like clicking numbers. An app feels very at hand. It almost feels cheap.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't like that for myself. So I'm not going to give that to my clients.
And how have you, like, I think, and I agree with that. Like, when I was doing online coaching, the apps weren't really there. So it was all pretty much just, Google Sheets and Excel documents and things like that I'd created. How have you kind of built up the repository of kind of IP in the background so that if this particular client, a beginner competitor or a 19-year-old that wants fat loss, do you have particular kind of systems and frameworks that you can kind of deploy to each client?
I think any coach would be lying if they said, I have a client sign up and everything's, bespoke. I have a blank page. Yeah. Like that's not the case. Well, I mean, when I first started, yes, if someone wanted a meal plan, I was on my fitness pal, I was calculating it all in. Again, the technology has advanced from what it was 4 years ago. And now I do have like the systems where it's got macro calculators, it's got meal plan templates, it's got things all in the sheets. So collection of Google Sheets, being able to, understand a bit of coding, being able to fix things yourself, but also use resources. Like I said to you yesterday, I don't fucking know how to really code. So that's not my need. That's not my thing. So it doesn't need to be my thing. My thing is being a coach, being a good coach. So I'll go to someone whose thing is Google Sheets and ask them, hey, can you do this? And that's making my life easier. And then I just transfer it and manipulate things and put it into my own kind of like personal.
Well, outsource. I think, that's also another thing that stops a lot of coaches from going online. They're like, oh, I don't know the systems and process. It's like, well, obviously if you've got a strong education background and some experience, it's going to be easy to build them, like in terms of the actual training plans and whatnot. But the tech aspect, like just outsource that shit.
Yeah, you're not a tech genius.
Yeah, I agree. Talk to me like, you know, right now you've recently been doing these masterclasses, you've built up this community. Like what's helped you kind of go from, you know, servicing 10, 20, 30 clients to where now, you know, you can do this, a masterclass in a week's notice, get 100 people on and kind of really engage this community. Like what are some of the things that you've done to do that?
Yeah. Obviously, if you're wanting to do masterclasses, you're going to need to have like evidence of what you do. So that's why having that online space before, having transformations, having content out there is going to help build that audience. Because it's like, why should someone come to that masterclass? So that is the baseline. I wouldn't start with masterclasses. It's kind of like the second point. But being able to, it was kind of like, okay, well, how can I generate a little bit more money, be able to educate? Because I do educate my clients, my one-on-one clients that I work with, like I'm on phone calls with them and I'm educating them, I'm helping them. But it's like, okay, I'm having a 30-minute call with a client who's paying me $100 a week. It's $100 a week for that 30-minute call. But in that 30 minutes, I could have 100 people on this call telling them the same thing, paying me maybe $70. And it's like, well, boom, I'm making like $7,000 in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's like actually realizing and understanding that. But okay, what topic do you want to talk about? Like I have my specific niches and what I like to actually talk about and what people I notice find, again, looking at your analytics, what videos do well on my Instagram that people are actually following me for. They're topics that people are clearly interested in. They're wanting me to talk more about it and inclined. But then do I have proof that works?
So you're basing your masterclasses off stuff that's been engaging, but then also stuff that you can, I guess, validate with evidence.
100%. Yes. Yeah.
And so it sounds like though for you, it's been like a stage 2 or 3. It's not something that 20-year-old Tabby was doing. Yeah.
I knew I always wanted to do masterclasses because I always wanted to educate. My original plan was to obviously do my Cert 3, 4, go to uni, do exercise science, finish that sort of degree and go into higher education. It's the fact that I did have that influx of coaching and I realized, okay, I don't actually need to not waste my time, but I don't need to go away and do this.
It's not necessary. I tell people like the school of self-development these days can sometimes be the best journey as an entrepreneur. Like, you know, proof of concept, like look at what you're doing from an income perspective. Like had you gone to university, and it's not saying people shouldn't go, but had you gone, you wouldn't be doing, you know, $50,000 a month and growing and stuff like that anyway.
I wouldn't be. So educate, like outsourcing like education and also doing your own education in your own time. Like you can educate yourself for free. You don't need to go spend like millions of dollars, thousands of dollars on degrees. But I mean, that's great. And that's what I wanted to do at the time, but I just loved the whole educating aspect. So I knew that that's what I wanted to do, but I never had the ability to do that 3 years ago because no one would have listened to me.
I know it's something you've spoken about, like education in particular for women and kind of, you know, some things that you're looking at doing in the pipeline with that. But talk to me, like, do you feel how would I say it? Do you feel it's harder or easier for women in the fitness industry to build a brand like based off their knowledge? Do you feel that like there's more of a
like a stigma?
Yeah. Like I find like most of the educators in the space these days are men. There's not really as many women. Like, so, you know, what's your thoughts on that? Like, how do you find it for yourself? Like, especially because education's a big part of what you do.
Yes, I think it comes down to the approach. I think the reason I do pretty well with educating is because of it's because of my energy. And I would say I have a bit of like a masculine approach, but that's because I sound confident, my approach is confident, and I know what I'm talking about. Whereas females do have that imposter syndrome where they feel like someone else can do it better. So what's the point of me doing it?
Yeah.
And I understand that. But I've just actually never been like that. I've always, I don't even think I really experienced imposter syndrome. I've always been someone who's like, I know what I'm going to do and I will get there eventually. It's just going to take time. But I mean, it can be challenging. And I think there needs to be like a safe space for females to go because not every female has the same mindset as what I did from the start too. So.
Would you like most of the kind of questions and the comments that you get, especially from the education space, are they from men and women?
It's primarily just women. Of course, I'm going to have some kind of interest from males, but I would say predominantly females.
And what are some of the, like, from a business standpoint, like obviously from a you know, their own body standpoint, there's a different set of issues, but from a business standpoint that you're finding, like with young women coming into the industry right now, like what are some of the things that are holding them back?
I would say holding them back is, as in like what's holding them back from creating their own business?
Creating their business, growing their business, scaling their business.
Yeah, it would come down to lack of like resources, lack of education, and not having that all in one. So it's like, yes, I can be educated through this program. I can get some resources from this person. This person can give me tools, but there's so many different places. It's like, it would be so easy if a female could just go to one place. They're given the education, they're given the knowledge, they're given the tools, they're given the tricks. And then they're like, here, you're set up, you're ready to go. Now, like, you're ready to do this on your own.
Yeah, I agree. I guess fast forwarding into kind of the back end, the rest of this year, right? Like what's on the agenda? What's in store for you, Tabs?
Look, I'm probably going to like say this now, and in 10 months, I'm going to look back and be like, wow, that was so different to like what I thought. It's always the case for every year. But I never want to take a step back from my online coaching purely because I just absolutely love it. But I would love to dive into more because I like helping people at the end of the day. I like educating. I like putting that out there. So if I can help the like next female getting into the industry in this whole flooded industry, not knowing where they're going to go, I would love if I can help these females have a sense of like self-confidence in building their own personal brand and putting themselves out into the industry, into the market, and then start taking on their own clients.
So more in the education space.
Definitely more in the education space for 2024.
What about competing, stuff like that? I think you mentioned not this year, but next year.
Yeah, I think I need to be realistic with myself. I wouldn't have been realistic last year, and I need to be self-aware about the improvements that I do need to make, and that's not going to happen in the next 10 months. Like, it's just not. Our feet, our body, like, I wish I could grow like my glutes in the next 8 months, but you can't. Like, it's, you do, the longer you spend, and I also am still young. My muscle isn't mature. I would rather get my health back on track, get a lot more density, make sure my muscle has that extra year to develop, and hopefully the end of 2025. And that will be kind of what I'm looking at the moment.
Patience is a good message, especially for women. If people don't know, where can they find you?
My Instagram is just at Tabby Knight, and so is my TikTok as well. That'd be the best platforms to follow me on.
Awesome. Tabs, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Pleasure, as always. Thanks, Daine.
All right.